In this Blender video, I'm going to demonstrate how to make a 3D model of this hammer. In my next video, I'll demonstrate how to add materials and textures to it. The Blender version that I'm using is 2.8 beta. Since this is a beta version of Blender, you should be aware that some of the things that I'll be showing might change. Also, version 2.8 is a major update to Blender, so if you're using an earlier version, then many of the things I'll be showing will be different. For the benefit of those who are brand new to Blender, I'll start by covering some Blender basics and then we'll jump into modeling the hammer. If you want to go straight to the modeling, then skip ahead in the video to 3 minutes and 52 seconds. In Blender, there is more than one way to do many of the common things that you'll be doing. For example, if you put the cursor over this magnifier icon, hold down the left mouse button, and then move the mouse, you can zoom the view in or out. You can also zoom the view by using the scroll wheel. As another example, if you press 1 on the number pad, the view will switch to front view. Another way to do this is to open the View menu, select Viewport, and then click Front. This is a list of the hotkeys for these vantage points. Learning hotkeys in Blender can help you to work much quicker. By the way, these hotkeys say to use the numpad. This is important because in Blender, the numbers on the number pad work differently than the numbers at the top of the keyboard. If you don't have a number pad, then you can open the Edit menu and select Preferences. Then click the Input button and enable Emulate Numpad. This will cause the numbers at the top of the keyboard to work like the number pad. If you click the Save Preferences button, then Blender will remember the settings the next time it opens. Even though Blender gives you multiple ways to do many things, in most cases I'm only going to be showing one way. But as you explore Blender, you may discover other methods that you like better. As I previously mentioned, you can zoom the view by using the scroll wheel. To rotate the view, hold down the middle mouse button and move the mouse. On mini mice, the scroll wheel is also the middle mouse button. To pan the view, while holding down the Shift key, press the middle mouse button and move the mouse. To select an object, left-click on it. Here I'll select the light source, the camera, and then the cube. With the cube selected, you can move it, scale it, and rotate it. To move it, press G, which means grab, and then move the mouse. You can see how far it's moving up here. If you want to restrict the movement to the x-axis, then press X. If you press Y, then it will be restricted to the y-axis, and if you press Z, then it will be restricted to the z-axis. If you want to move it by a specific distance, then type in a numeric value. I'll type 1.2. When you're finished moving it, then click the left mouse button to complete the operation. To undo the last operation, press Ctrl Z. To scale an object, press S and then move the mouse. And just like when moving an object, you can restrict the scaling to the X, Y, or Z axis by pressing X, Y, or Z. You can scale by a specific amount by typing in a numeric value. To complete the operation, click the left mouse button. To rotate an object, press R and then move the mouse. Rotating can be restricted to the X, Y, or Z axis by pressing X, Y, or Z. You can also rotate by a specific amount by typing in a numeric value. To complete the operation, click the left mouse button. Now let's start modeling the hammer. We're going to start with a new project, so from the File menu select New, and then General. We're going to turn this cube into the head of the hammer. We're currently in Object mode, which is useful for things like adding objects and moving them around. To edit a mesh, Edit mode or Sculpt mode is typically used. In this video, we're going to be using Edit mode, so press the Tab key to switch to Edit mode. Pressing the Tab key will toggle back and forth between Edit mode and Object mode. In Edit mode, you choose here whether you want to work with vertices, edges, or faces. Start by clicking the Face Select button. Currently, all of the faces are selected. If you want to deselect everything, press Alt-A. If you want to select everything, press A. We only want the left side face to be selected, so click it to select it. Now we're going to extrude it. To do this, press E to extrude and move the new face a little to the left. If you want to know precisely how far I'm extruding, then look up here. To complete the operation, left-click. Now scale it down in size by pressing S and then scale it down. And just like when I was extruding, you can look up here to see precisely how far I'm scaling. To complete the operation, left-click. Next, press E to extrude. Then press E to extrude again. Now press S and scale it up in size. We're going to be making this face round, but for this to work we need to first add some more geometry to the object. We can do this with loop cuts. Adding loop cuts is a multi-step process. First press Ctrl R and place the cursor over an edge that you want to cut. Then use the scroll wheel to select how many cuts. We're going to add 2 cuts. Then left-click. Now if you move your mouse, the loop cuts will move with it, which allows you to position the cuts. Next, you can either left-click when they're in position or right-click if you want them centered. We want them centered, so right-click. Now we're going to add 2 more loop cuts, so press Ctrl R, use the scroll wheel to make 2 cuts, and then left-click and then right-click. When we added the loop cuts, Blender switched into Edge Select mode, so click the Face Select button. Now we're going to select all 9 of these faces on the end. An easy way to do this is to hold down the left mouse button and pull the selection box over the faces. Next, we're going to turn the selected faces into a single face. So press X to delete and select Dissolve Faces. Now we're going to make this face round. So from the Mesh menu, select Transform and then to Sphere. Now you can move the mouse to adjust the strength of this effect, or you can enter in a value. So enter 1 and then press the Enter key. Now we're going to extrude this face, so press E to extrude. Next we'll add a bevel, so press Ctrl B and use the mouse to adjust the bevel size. Now let's model the other side, so select these 9 faces. Then press E to extrude. Now press S to scale. Then E to extrude 2 times. Then S to scale. Then E to extrude. Next we're going to add more geometry using loop cuts. So press Ctrl R, use the scroll wheel to make 2 loop cuts, then left-click and right-click. Now we're going to transform this cube section into a sphere shape. So that we can select edges on the front and back of the object at the same time, click the Show Whole Screen Transparent button. This lets you see through the object, and it also lets you select any vertices, edges, or faces that can be seen. Now rotate the object to the side and select the cube shape. To transform this into a sphere, from the Mesh menu select Transform, then to Sphere. Then type 1 and then press Enter. Now I'll press Alt-A to deselect everything. Next we're going to select just this ring of edges. One way to do this is to first switch to Edge Select mode if it's not already selected. Then hold down the Alt key and left-click one of the edges. Now we're going to scale this down to 0 on the Y-axis, which will flatten it. So press S, then Y, then 0, then Enter. Then move it on the Y-axis by pressing G, then Y, then move it to the right. Now hold down the Alt key and left-click one of these edges. We're also going to flatten this ring, so press S, then Y, then 0, then Enter. Then press G and then Y and move it to the right. Now select this whole section. Then press G and then Y and move it to the left. Now click the Show Whole Screen Transparent button to disable it. Next we're going to add a Subdivision surface modifier, which will make the object look smoother. So switch to the Modifiers panel and add a Subdivision surface modifier. This sets the number of subdivisions for the current view, and this sets it for the final render. Set both of these values to 3. Now I'll press Tab for Object Mode so that we can see what this looks like. The Subdivision surface modifier smoothed everything out, but there are some areas where we want the sharper edges. We can accomplish this by adding extra geometry. So I'll press Tab to switch back to edit mode. If you add a loop cut next to an edge, it will sharpen it. So press Ctrl R, left click here, slide it close to this edge, and left click again. Now let's add another loop cut to the other side. So Ctrl R, left click, slide it close to the edge, and left click. Now if I tab into object mode, you can see that the edge is sharper. I'll tab back into edit mode so that we can sharpen some more edges. Now press Ctrl R to add a loop cut. Then Ctrl R again. Then Ctrl R again. We're going to do something different to add geometry to the outside edge of this face. Instead of using a loop cut, we're going to inset the face. To do that, switch to Face Select mode, and then select the face. Then press I to inset and drag the mouse until the new edge is just a little smaller. Then do this one more time. Sometimes when you have a round face like this, you'll see ripples around the edge. By insetting it twice like we did, it can make it look much better. Now we're going to add 2 loop cuts to the center. So Ctrl R, use the scroll wheel to make 2 loop cuts, and then left click, and then right click. Now scale it up in size on the Z-axis by pressing S and then Z. Next we're going to put a hole through the center. So switch to Face Select mode and then left click to select the top middle face. Now rotate the view so that you can see the bottom. Then while holding down the Shift key, left click the bottom middle face to add it to the selection. By holding down the Shift key while selecting the bottom face, it prevented the top face from becoming deselected so that both faces are now selected. Now we're going to scale these faces up in size on the Y-axis. So press S, then Y, then scale it up. You can see that it scaled the top and the bottom. The hole is going to be created between these 2 selected faces. To do this, go to the Edge menu and select Bridge Edge Loops. To make the edges sharper at the ends of the hole, we're going to add an inset. So press I and then move the mouse until the edge is at its sharpest. Next we're going to inset the front and the back to flatten these surfaces. So select these 9 faces on the front. Then press I to inset and drag the mouse until the new edge is just a little smaller. Then do this one more time. Now select these 9 faces on the back. Then press I to inset. Then do this one more time. Now tab into object mode. You'll notice that there are some places like the inside of the hole where the surface is not smooth. To improve this, right-click and select Shade Smooth. Now it looks better. We're finished modeling the head of the hammer. This is a good time to save what I have so far. Now let's make the handle. So press Shift A and add a mesh cylinder. When you add an object, it will be added at the location of the 3D cursor. So the cylinder is currently located inside the head of the hammer. We're going to scale it up to be 9 times longer on the Z-axis. So press S, then Z, then 9, then Enter. Now add a Subdivision surface modifier. Set the view and render values to 3. The ends of the cylinder are pointed instead of flat, so we need to add some more geometry to it. So tab into edit mode. We're going to add 6 loop cuts to it. So press Ctrl R, use the scroll wheel to make 6 cuts, and then left click and then right click. Now we'll inset the top face to sharpen the edge. So switch to Face Select mode and select the top face. Then press I to inset and drag the mouse until the new edge is just a little smaller. You'll notice that the edge has ripples. So press I again and inset the face one more time. Now we're going to flatten the handle a little. So press A to select all. Then scale it on the X-axis by pressing S, then X, then flatten it a little. Now we'll move the handle into position. So move the handle on the Z-axis by pressing G, then Z. Then drag it until the top of the handle is near the top of the hammer head. Then press 3 on the number pad for right side view and zoom in. Then press G and then Z and align the top of the handle with the top of the head at the center. Next, we're going to shrink down the top of the handle so that it will fit in the hole that we made earlier. So click the Show Whole Screen Transparent button so that we can select faces on the front and back of the handle at the same time. Then select this top portion of the handle. Now click the Show Whole Screen Transparent button again to disable it. Next, press 7 on the number pad for top view. Then scale it on the Y-axis by pressing S, then Y, then scale it down in size until it's a little smaller than the hole. Then scale it on the X-axis by pressing S, then X, and again scale it down in size until it's a little smaller than the hole. Now let's reshape the rest of the handle. So press 3 on the number pad for right side view. Then click the Show Whole Screen Transparent button so that we can see through the objects. Now let's add a loop cut to sharpen this edge. So press Ctrl R, then left click, then drag it up close to the edge and left click again. Now select this edge. Then move it on the Z-axis by pressing G and then Z and then move it up a little. Now select this edge and scale it down by pressing S. Then press G and then Z and then move it up. Now select this edge. Press G and then Z and then move it up. Next, select the bottom edge. Then press S to scale and scale it up a little. Then press E and extrude it a little. Then press S and scale it down a little. Now we're going to inset this twice. So press I and then inset it. Then press I and inset it again. Now we'll add a loop cut to sharpen this edge. So press Ctrl R, then left click. Then drag it down and left click again. We're finished modeling the hammer. Now click the Show Whole Screen Transparent button to disable it, and then tab into Object Mode. I'm going to save what I have so far. In my next video, I'll demonstrate how to add materials and textures to it to produce this result. Well, that concludes this video. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe and leave a comment.